The courtroom buzzed with low chatter, a mix of lawyers shuffling papers and folks waiting for their turn. A young rookie cop stood near the back, arms crossed, his blue uniform crisp but his attitude sloppy. He'd been on the job barely a year, and he carried himself like he owned the place, chest puffed out, a smirk tugging at his lips. He leaned against the wall, watching people file in, thinking this was just another dull day he'd coast through. Then the door swung open, and she walked in. She was a black woman, older, with a face carved from years of hard-earned grit. Her judge's robe flowed behind her like a shadow, and the room went quiet fast. The rookie's eyes flicked over her, and something about her, maybe the way she moved, steady and sure, tickled him wrong. He let out a loud, sharp laugh, cutting through the silence like a knife. Heads turned. A few folks gasped. His chuckle bounced off the wood-paneled walls, and he didn't even try to hide it, muttering under his breath, "This ought to be good." She stopped dead in her tracks. Her head turned slow, like a hawk spotting prey, and those dark eyes locked onto him. The air got thick, heavy, like a storm rolling in. The rookie's smirk froze, but he held it, thinking he could play it off. She didn't blink. Didn't flinch. She stepped up to her bench, every move deliberate, and the whole room watched her, waiting. He shifted his weight, still cocky, figuring she'd ignore him like everyone else did when he ran his mouth. Then it happened. Her hand gripped the gavel, a small, worn thing that looked older than the courthouse itself, and she brought it down. The crack exploded through the room, so loud it rattled the windows. Dust shook loose from the ceiling. People jumped in their seats, and the rookie's grin vanished like smoke. His heart thudded hard, and he straightened up, hands dropping to his sides. She leaned forward, just a little, her voice low and sharp as a blade. "You think this is funny, boy?" she said, so quiet he almost missed it, but it hit him like a punch. His mouth went dry. The room spun a little, and he felt every eye on him now, lawyers, clerks, even the old guy in the front row with a cane. They weren't laughing. They were staring, some with pity, some with something darker. The judge didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. That one sentence, those 5 words, carried a weight he couldn't dodge. His knees wobbled, and sweat beaded on his forehead. He opened his mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. She didn't wait for him to try. Her eyes stayed on him, cold and unyielding, like she could see straight through to the bones of who he was. The gavel rested in her hand now, still, but the echo of that slam hung in the air. He swallowed hard, his bravado gone, replaced by a creeping chill. What had he done? Who was she? The questions clawed at him, but he had no answers, not yet. She turned away. Finally, breaking that stare, and the courtroom breathed again. But for the rookie, the air stayed stuck in his chest. He'd laughed at the wrong person, and something told him that hammer wasn't done dropping. The sun was barely up when the rookie cop rolled out of bed, his alarm blaring like a siren in his cramped apartment. He groaned, rubbing sleep from his eyes, and stumbled to the mirror. His uniform hung on the door, pressed and ready, a badge pinned to the chest that still felt too shiny for a guy like him. He was young, barely past his 20s, but he carried himself like he'd been on the force forever. His dad's old police stories echoed in his head, tales of busting crooks, cracking wise, and walking tall. That's how he saw himself, or at least how he wanted to. He lived in a small town, the kind where everyone knew your business before you did. It sat on the edge of a bigger city, close enough for trouble to spill over but far enough to feel like its own world. The police station was a squat brick building, paint peeling from years of neglect, and he'd been assigned there fresh out of training. His buddies on the force were a rough bunch, older guys with scars and loud laughs, always ribbing him about being the new kid. That morning, he met them at the diner down the street, a greasy spot with cracked vinyl seats and coffee that tasted like tar. "Courtroom duty today," one of them said, a guy with a graying mustache and a gut that strained his buttons. He slid a plate of eggs across the table. "Babysitting lawyers. Hope you brought a book." The rookie grinned, leaning back in the booth. "Nah, I'll charm my way through it. Always do." He popped a piece of bacon in his mouth, chewing loud. Had a sergeant chewing me out last week for a speeding ticket I didn't write up right. Talked my way out, no sweat. The others laughed, shaking their heads. Kid, you're gonna charm yourself right into a cell one day, another cop said, a wiry guy with a smoker's rasp. Keep that mouth in check. He didn't listen. He never did. His dad had taught him that a quick tongue and a steady stare could get you out of anything. Growing up, he'd watched the old man talk down drunks, smooth over fights, and come home with a grin every time. That was the job to him, tough, sure, but nothing he couldn't handle. He'd been a loudmouth since he was a kid, cracking jokes in class, dodging detention with a shrug and a smile. It worked back then, and it worked now. Or so he thought. After breakfast, he drove to the courthouse, his patrol car rattling over potholes. The building loomed ahead, old and gray, with steps worn smooth by decades of feet. He parked crooked, grabbed his cap, and swaggered inside. The lobby smelled like dust and coffee, and a clerk waved him toward the main courtroom. Keep the peace, rookie, she said, barely looking up from her papers. He tipped his cap, smirking, and pushed through the double doors. Inside, it was packed, people crammed onto benches, whispering and shifting. He took his spot near the back, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. His eyes scanned the room, a guy in a cheap suit fidgeting, a woman clutching a tissue, a lawyer flipping through a briefcase. Boring, he thought. He'd rather be out on the street, chasing something real, not standing here like a statue. His fingers tapped his belt, restless, and he started sizing up the crowd, guessing who'd crack under a hard stare. That's when he saw her, the judge, stepping through a side door. She wasn't what he expected. Older, yeah, but there was something about her that didn't fit his picture of a courtroom bigshot. Maybe it was the robe, too big for her frame, or the way she moved, like she owned every inch of the place. He didn't know her story, didn't care to. All he saw was a chance to break the monotony. When she climbed the bench, he let out that laugh, loud, sharp, a bark that turned heads. It wasn't planned, it just slipped out, like it always did when he felt too big for the room. He didn't see the storm coming. Didn't know her eyes could cut like that, or that her gavel could hit harder than any fist he'd ever dodged. He stood there, still grinning, thinking he'd skate by like always. His buddy's warnings, his dad's voice, they faded under the hum of his own cockiness. He was wrong, though. Dead wrong. And in about 10 seconds, he'd feel the weight of it, a weight he couldn't talk his way out of. The courtroom still buzzed in the rookie's ears, that gavel's echo lingering like a bad dream, but all he could see now was her. She sat up there on the bench, straight-backed and still, her robe pooling around her like spilled ink. Her face didn't give much away, lines etched deep from years of something heavy, eyes dark and sharp as a hawk's. She didn't shout or wave her arms like some judges he'd seen on TV. She didn't need to. That quiet of hers, it sucked the air right out of the room, and the rookie wasn't the only one who felt it. Folks around the courthouse knew her, or thought they did. They called her the Iron Lady behind her back, half in awe, half in fear. She'd been on that bench longer than most of the clerks had been alive, and stories about her floated like smoke, nobody quite sure what was true. Some said she'd grown up in a shack down by the river, no shoes, no heat, just her and a mama who scrubbed floors to keep them fed. Others swore she'd lost a husband young, or maybe a kid, and that's why her stare could freeze you solid. Whatever it was, she'd climbed out of nothing to sit where she did, and that made her a legend in a town that didn't hand out praise easy. She'd started as a clerk herself, decades back, filing papers in a basement office with no windows. Back then, the courthouse was a man's world, white men, mostly, and she was just a shadow moving through it. But she had a mind like a steel trap, folks said, and a way of listening that made you spill more than you meant to. She studied law at night, books spread across a rickety table, while the world outside slept. When she passed the bar, nobody clapped. They just stared, like she'd broken some unwritten rule. She didn't care. She kept going, case by case, until she landed that robe. The rookie didn't know any of this, of course. All he saw was an old woman in a funny outfit, someone to poke fun at to kill the boredom. But that laugh of his, it hit her different. She'd heard worse in her time, sneers, slurs, whispers that followed her down halls. Each one had piled up inside her, a stack of bricks she carried without bending. His laugh wasn't the loudest or the cruelest, but it was fresh, raw, and it sliced into a spot she'd patched over long ago. Her eyes found him, and for a second, something flickered there, not anger, not yet, but a memory she didn't let show. She'd faced bigger fools than him. There was that lawyer, years back, who'd smirked at her during a trial, thinking she wouldn't notice. She'd buried him in paperwork, made him sweat through a dozen appeals, and he never smirked again. Or the politician who tried to bribe her, all slick smiles and cash under the table. She'd sent him packing with a contempt charge and a story he couldn't live down. She didn't play games, she built walls, and nobody climbed them unless she let them. The rookie, though? He was new meat, green and loud, and she saw right through him. Her hands rested on the bench now, steady, the gavel quiet beside her. She didn't need to raise her voice, never had. People leaned in when she spoke, like they were afraid to miss a word. The clerk swore she could hear a lie from across the room, and the lawyers knew better than to test her. She'd seen too much, carried too much, and that weight turned her into something solid, unmovable. But there was a crack in that armor, one she kept hidden. Something about the rookie's laugh, the way it rang out so careless, tugged at it. Not enough to break her, but enough to make her pause. The room watched her, holding its breath. She didn't look at the papers in front of her, didn't glance at the bailiff or the crowd. Her gaze stayed on him, pinning him like a bug under glass. He squirmed, his smirk long gone, and she let the silence stretch, just long enough to make him feel small. She'd dealt with his kind before, young bucks full of hot air, thinking the world owed them a laugh. She'd outlasted them all. And this one? He'd learn, or he'd break. Either way, she'd be the one holding the hammer. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath, every eye glued to the judge as she stared down the rookie. He stood there, pinned by her gaze, his uniform suddenly too tight, his throat dry as sand. That laugh of his, sharp and dumb, still hung in the air, and now it felt like a rope tightening around his neck. People shifted in their seats, papers rustled, but nobody spoke. The gavel sat still on her bench, but the memory of its crack kept everyone on edge. She leaned forward, just a hair, and the rookie's knees twitched like they might give out. "Step up," she said, her voice low and hard, cutting through the quiet like a blade. It wasn't a request. He blinked, glanced around, hoping she meant someone else, but those dark eyes didn't waver. The crowd parted as he shuffled forward, boots scuffing the floor, his earlier swagger gone. His buddies from the force were in the back, smirking behind their hands, and he could feel their stares like needles. He stopped a few feet from the bench, hands clenched, trying to look tough. It didn't work. She didn't rush. She let him stew, let the silence press down on him until he shifted his weight, antsy. Then she spoke again. "You think this is a game?" Her words were slow, deliberate, each one landing like a stone. He opened his mouth, ready to toss out some excuse, maybe a quick no, ma'am, or a half-baked apology, but she didn't give him the chance. "You stand there in that uniform, laughing like a fool, disrespecting this room, this town, and everyone in it." Her voice stayed steady, but it carried a fire that made his stomach twist. He swallowed hard, his mind racing. He'd talked his way out of worse, speeding tickets, bar fights, even that time he mouthed off to his sergeant. But this? This was different. She wasn't yelling, wasn't red-faced like his dad used to get. She was calm, too calm, and that scared him more than anything. The courtroom watched, some folks nodding like they'd seen this play out before, others leaning forward, hungry for what came next. "I've seen boys like you," she went on, her eyes narrowing. "Think you're untouchable 'cause you've got a badge and a big mouth. Well, not here. Not today." She tapped a finger on the bench, a small move that somehow felt louder than the gavel. "You're gonna learn respect, and you're gonna learn it the hard way. The rookie's heart thudded. Learn? What did that mean? A fine? Jail? His mind spun, picturing his dad's disappointed frown, his buddy's endless ribbing. She straightened up, her robe rustling, and delivered the hammer. 1 week of community service, she said, her tone final. You'll report tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. sharp, to clean graffiti off every wall in the South End, the poorest streets we've got. You'll scrub till they shine, and you'll do it alone. The room erupted, gasps and murmurs rippling through the crowd. His jaw dropped. Scrubbing walls? In the hot sun, in that rundown part of town? He almost laughed again, thinking it was a joke, but her face stopped him cold. You don't show, you don't finish, and I'll haul you back here for contempt, she added, her voice like iron. And trust me, boy, you won't like what happens then. She nodded to the bailiff, who stepped forward, a big guy with a bored look, ready to make sure the rookie listened. The gavel came down again, not as hard this time, but enough to seal it. The sound hit him like a slap, and he stood there, stunned, as the room buzzed back to life. His buddies snickered louder now, one whispering, "Good luck, hotshot," as they filed out. He wanted to snap back, tell them to shut it, but his tongue felt glued down. His dad's voice crept in instead, old warnings about keeping his head low, not poking the bear. Too late for that. He'd poked a lion, and she'd roared back in her own way. He trudged out, the judge's words looping in his head, where words fail. What did that even mean? He didn't know, but something told him he'd find out. Outside, the air was thick, the sun already baking the steps. He kicked a pebble, cursing under his breath. A week of grunt work, no glory, no stories to brag about. Just him, a brush, and a bucket. He didn't see her watching from the window, didn't feel the weight of what was coming. But it was there, waiting, and it was bigger than he could have guessed. The sun wasn't even up when the rookie pulled his beat-up truck into the south end of town, the streets still dark and quiet except for the hum of crickets. His eyes were gritty from a sleepless night, his head full of grumbles about the judge and her stupid sentence. Cleaning graffiti? He'd rather eat dirt. But here he was, 6 a.m. sharp, just like she'd ordered, with a bucket, a stiff brush, and a bag of rags dumped by the curb. The air smelled like damp concrete and old trash, and the walls ahead, crumbling brick covered in spray paint, stretched out like a punishment he couldn't outrun. He yanked his cap low, muttering curses as he dipped the brush in soapy water. The first wall was a mess, red and black tags looping over each other, words he couldn't read, and a cartoon skull with a goofy grin. He scrubbed hard, his arms burning after 10 minutes, water splashing his boots. This was the poorest part of town, where houses sagged and windows stayed boarded. He'd driven through here on patrols, windows up, never stopping long. Now he was stuck, and the judge's voice echoed in his head, "You'll learn respect." Yeah, right, he thought. All he was learning was how to hate mornings. An hour in, he noticed the old man. He was perched on a stoop across the street, hunched in a faded coat, a thermos. Cane in one hand, watching the rookie with eyes that didn't blink. The rookie glanced over, annoyed. "What are you looking at, Pops?" He snapped, his voice rough from lack of sleep. The old man didn't answer, just kept staring, his face weathered like tree bark, gray hair poking out under a wool cap. The rookie shook his head and went back to scrubbing, figuring the guy was just some nosy local. The sun climbed higher, baking the pavement, and sweat stung his eyes. His hands ached, the brush digging into his palms, but the wall was starting to look cleaner. Grudgingly, he noticed it. Then the old man spoke, his voice creaky but clear. "She sees more than you know." The rookie froze, brush dripping, and turned. "What did you say?" The old man didn't repeat it, just tapped his cane on the step and looked away, like he'd said nothing at all. Weird, the rookie thought, brushing it off. Old guys said odd stuff all the time. He moved to the next wall, this one tagged with green swirls and a faded blue arrow. As he scrubbed, something fell from the old man's coat, a small, yellowed photo fluttering to the ground. The rookie squinted, curious despite himself, and saw a young girl in pigtails, smiling big, standing by a river. He couldn't make out much else from this far, but it stuck with him, nagging like a splinter. By noon, his shirt was soaked, his back screaming, and the heat made the air shimmer. He dropped the brush, gulping water from a bottle, when he spotted something in the dirt near the wall, a glint of metal. He kicked at it, uncovering a tarnished badge, smaller than his own, with a name scratched into it. He rubbed it clean, squinting at the letters, same last name as the judge's, etched deep. His gut twisted. Couldn't be hers, she was too old, and this looked ancient. Maybe a relative? He shoved it in his pocket, glancing at the old man, who was back to staring. Who is she, really? The rookie muttered to himself, wiping his brow. He'd laughed at her, sure, but now questions piled up. That gavel, that stare, this badge, what was her deal? The old man coughed, a dry rattle, and spoke again. She came from here, you know. This street. The rookie's head snapped up. What? The old man pointed his cane at the ground. Right where you're standing. Lost more than most, gained it back harder. The rookie frowned, his brain churning. The judge grew up here? In this dump? He looked around, cracked sidewalks, rusted cars, a stray dog nosing through trash. Hard to picture her in a robe coming from this. But the old man's words had a weight, like he wasn't just rambling. The rookie picked up the brush again, slower now, the badge heavy in his pocket. He didn't know what it meant, but it felt like a piece of something bigger. Late afternoon, the sun dipped low, painting the walls orange. He stepped back, hands raw, and saw the difference, clean patches where muck used to be. It didn't feel good, not yet, but it wasn't nothing. The old man stood, shaky, and hobbled closer. Keep going, he said, his eyes glinting. She's watching. The rookie's skin prickled. Watching? From where? He scanned the empty street, half expecting her shadow on a corner. Nothing. Just him, the walls, and a mystery he couldn't shake. The days blurred into a sweaty haze for the rookie, each morning starting the same, dragging himself to the south end with his bucket and brush, the sun climbing fast to roast him. His hands were a mess now, blisters popping, skin raw, and his back ached like he'd been hauling bricks. 5 days into his week of punishment, and the walls were starting to look decent, patches of clean brick peeking through years of grime. But inside, he was fraying, his pride stretched thin as old rope. The judge's words looped in his head, you'll learn respect, and he wanted to spit at them. The old man was there every day, same stoop, same stare. He'd sip from his thermos, mutter odd things, and watch the rookie scrub. At first, it was just annoying, but now it gnawed at him. That photo of the girl, the badge in his pocket, the old guy's hints about the judge, it was piling up, heavy and confusing. He'd started asking himself questions he didn't want to. Who was she before that robe? Why'd she send him here, of all places? He shoved it down, focusing on the wall, but it kept creeping back. That 5th night, the air was thick and sticky, the sky bruised with clouds. He was alone, the old man gone for once, and the street felt too quiet, no dogs barking, no cars rattling by. He scrubbed a wall near an alley, paint flaking under his brush, when something caught his eye, faint scratches in the brick, barely visible under the graffiti. He leaned closer, squinting, and made out words, strength is earned. His breath hitched. It wasn't new, the cuts were old, weathered deep. Who'd carved it? His fingers traced the letters, rough and cool, and a chill ran through him. He stepped back, staring at the wall like it might talk. The badge burned in his pocket, and the old man's voice echoed, she came from here. Was this her? Had she scratched those words, years ago, when this place was her world? He shook his head, trying to laugh it off, but the sound died in his throat. His arms shook, not from the work, but from something else. Anger, maybe, or exhaustion. He didn't know anymore. He just knew he was sick of it, sick of the heat, the blisters, the judge's game. That's when he snapped. He hurled the brush at the wall, hard, and it clattered to the ground with a splash. "Enough," he yelled, his voice bouncing off the empty street. He kicked the bucket, water sloshing over his boots, and sank to the curb, head in his hands. His chest heaved, his eyes stung, and for the first time in years, he felt small, like a kid who'd mouthed off and got caught. His dad's voice crept in, soft this time, "You push too far, you fall hard." He hated that it was true. The old man's stories started spilling back. The bits he'd brushed off. A girl who'd lost everything, a house burned down, a family torn apart, a town that turned its back. She'd fought anyway, clawing her way up, step by bloody step. The rookie hadn't listened, not really, but now it stuck. He pictured her young, maybe his age, standing right here, carving those words with a nail or a rock. Strength is earned. He rubbed his face, rough palms scraping stubble, and felt the weight of it. She wasn't just punishing him, she was testing him, shoving him into her past to see if he'd break. He didn't hear the old man approach, but there he was, cane tapping the pavement, his shadow long in the streetlight. "You're close," the old guy said, voice raspy but firm. The rookie looked up, eyes red. "Close to what?" The old man nodded at the wall. "Figuring it out." She did, too, right there. He pointed a shaky finger at the carving, then shuffled off, leaving the rookie alone again. He sat there a long time, the night pressing in, the words staring back at him. His hands throbbed, his pride was in pieces, but something shifted. He didn't get it all, not yet, but he felt her, like a ghost in the bricks. She'd been broken once, too, and she'd built herself back. Could he? He didn't know. But he picked up the brush, slow, and started scrubbing again. Not for her, not for the sentence, just to finish what he'd started. The wall gleamed a little in the dark, and for the first time, he didn't hate it. The last day dawned gray and cool, a relief after the week's brutal heat. The rookie stood in the south end, his boots scuffed, his hands wrapped in bandages he'd rigged from an old shirt. The final wall loomed ahead, a big one, its graffiti faded but stubborn, blues and yellows streaking the brick like a kid's wild drawing. He gripped his brush, the blisters stinging less now, and got to work. His arms moved steady, almost automatic, the rhythm of it sinking into his bones. He wasn't the same guy who'd laughed in that courtroom, and he felt it deep, even if he couldn't name it yet. The old man was there, as always, perched on his stoop with that cane and thermos. He didn't say much today, just watched, his eyes glinting like he knew something the rookie didn't. The street stayed quiet, no cars, no dogs, just the scrape of the brush and the drip of water. By noon, the wall was half clean, the brick showing through, rough but honest. The rookie stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow, and caught his breath. It wasn't perfect, but it was something he'd made with his own hands. That's when the old man stood, slow and creaky, and hobbled over. He stopped a few feet away, leaning on his cane, and looked at the wall like it was a painting in a gallery. "You did good," he said, his voice soft but clear. The rookie shrugged, awkward, not sure what to say. "It's just a wall." The old man shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Ain't just a wall. It's hers." The rookie frowned, confused, but the old guy kept going. "I'm her brother. Been watching you for her." The words hit like a punch. Her brother? The rookie's jaw tightened, his mind racing back, the photo, the badge, the carved words. It clicked, slow and heavy. The judge had sent him here, to her old street, and this guy had been her eyes the whole time. He stared at the old man, searching his face, those same sharp eyes, that same quiet strength. "She wanted me to fail," he muttered, half to himself. The old man chuckled, dry and low. "Nah. She wanted you to see." "See what?" He didn't ask, but the old man kept talking, his voice dropping softer. "She grew up right here, lost everything, house, folks, hope. Fought her way out, made something of it. She saw you, that laugh, and knew you needed this." He tapped his cane on the ground. "Not to break you. To build you. The rookie's throat tightened, his eyes flicking to the wall, the clean patches glowing in the dull light. He didn't know what to feel, anger, shame, maybe something warmer. He finished the wall by dusk, the sky turning purple, the air cool against his skin. Every stroke felt lighter now, like he was letting something go. When he dropped the brush for the last time, the old man handed him a rag to wipe his hands, then shuffled off without another word. The rookie stood there, alone, staring at the clean brick. It wasn't just a wall anymore, it was a mirror, showing him a guy he hadn't known he could be. A week later, he was back in the courtroom, standing straighter this time, his uniform wrinkled but his head clear. The judge called him up, her robe as stern as ever, her gavel resting quiet. The room watched, hushed, but it didn't feel heavy like before. She looked at him, those dark eyes searching, and he met her gaze, no smirk, no squirm. "You finished," she said, not a question. He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She didn't smile, didn't soften, but there was a flicker in her face, something like pride. "You're not who you were," she said, her voice low, steady. "That's the point." She nodded once, sharp, and waved him off. No gavel, no lecture, just that, and it was enough. He walked out, the door swinging shut behind him, and felt the air hit his face, crisp and new. His buddies were waiting, ready to tease, but he just grinned and kept walking. They didn't get it, and that was fine. Later, driving home, he thought about the wall, the badge still in his pocket, the old man's words. Life's real hammer wasn't the loud stuff, the fights, the bravado. It was the quiet push, the grind that made you better if you let it. He'd laughed at her once, but now he got it, strength wasn't given, it was earned, one hard day at a time. And for the first time, he felt like he'd started earning his.